Hello, GrowWire listeners. And since this is the first podcast of the year, happy 2020. Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Fritz Nelson, and I'm joined, as always, by Kendall Fisher, producer and host of The GrowWire Show.
Woo! Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I was thinking about it, Kendall, and since this is the first podcast of the year, I wanted to tie it to resolutions. I don't know if you have made any resolutions for the new year?
I'm a big resolution person, and especially since it's a new decade, it's like you got to go big on this one. Like set some new resolutions for the decade, man. Get going.
That's a good idea. Have you kept your resolution so far?
I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
I set month by month resolutions a lot too, where like I know in January I try to, kind of restart the health thing, by no drinking, no sugars, no carbs, all that kind of stuff. I like to do Whole30. That's basically what it is. But it just helps restart my, my body a little bit and get ready for the new year. It always makes me feel good. But then for the overall year, I have a lot of resolutions that are very personal, and I probably won't dive into them. But I have kept them.
That makes me want to dive into it. I kind of go the other way. I do minute by minute resolutions.
Oh,
yeah.
What's of the minute right now?
To do this podcast.
Oh, perfect. That's a great resolution.
Right?
You're sticking to it.
Yeah, I have no choice. This microphone's sitting in front of me.
So what? Do you have any other resolutions?
Well, I definitely want to be better to the environment. I want to reduce my own emissions.
Well, that's a great way to kick off what we're getting into right now, right?
That's right. On this episode, I'm going with that theme. We're sitting down with Cara Naden, who is the director of Zero Carbon World, which is a nonprofit out of the UK. You'll be able to tell that by her accent, I think. And they have a mission to reduce our carbon footprint, challenge the misconceptions surrounding carbon reduction, and encouraging widespread adoption of sustainable solutions. She explains how the nonprofit is making this happen by donating free charging stations to businesses or organizations in hotels and tourist or leisure industries. And she's very passionate about it. She gives us some alarming statistics around climate change and the role that carbon emission plays in that, as well as the big challenges Zero Carbon World faces in pursuing its mission, the struggle to help people and organizations conceptualize that mission and competing against for-profit companies. And finally, she gives us some insight into how everyone can take practical steps in our day-to-day lives to reduce our carbon footprint. So all of this coming up next.
You're listening to the GrowWire podcast, a place where you will learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Fritz Nelson, the editor-in-chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your journey of growth.
Before we get into this episode with Cara Naden from Zero Carbon World, we want to thank our sponsors over at the Second City. Want to challenge your company to innovate and elevate through laughter? Second City Works is the B2B side of world-famous comedy mecca, the Second City. They've helped hundreds of Fortune 1000 companies inspire better performance by using their award-winning improvisation and audience-driven techniques that are powered by humor. Interested in live events, hands-on workshops, campaign consultation, branded content, and a whole lot more? Yeah, they thought so. Visit secondcityworks.com to learn more. Our website, growwire.com, also hosts many more stories of companies and organizations seeking to make a positive impact on the planet. Like our GrowWire show with Waiakea. What do they do, Kendall?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. Yes, this GrowWire show was one of my favorites, not only because the founder of YIKEA happens to be a friend of mine from college, but also because
you got to go to Hawaii.
Yes, I got to go to Hawaii, but no, what they're doing is awesome. It's a premium water company with the mission to provide naturally healthy, naturally alkaline water while contributing and promoting clean water access, conservation and education, and remaining carbon neutral from the start. Just everything that, the whole concept behind this premium water was really to give back to our world and to help eliminate some of the, carbon emission that a lot of travel back and forth between Hawaii and export and import elsewhere is kind of a big part of. So really interesting story. You can check that out on growwire.com under the Grow Wire Show tab at the top there, and a lot of other awesome stories just like it. And then again, it is growwire.com. That's growwire.com.
Let's start with a definition of zero carbon world.
That's a very good question, because really in nature there is nothing that's completely zero carbon. So we're trying to aim for carbon neutrality, and certainly decarbonising by removing fossil fuels from our society.
And what's the company's mission?
So our mission is to help decarbonise society in an open, affordable way, and myth bust against the misinformation that decarbonising is an expensive way forward, when in fact it can be very low cost. So we've created a low-cost charging station donation project, helping to access the electric vehicle infrastructure in a way that isn't prohibitive to many people.
So it's a nonprofit.
We are a non-profit UK charity. That is correct.
All right, we're gonna come back to that. But when you talk about the electric charging infrastructure, how is that different than just the electric infrastructure?
So this is specifically aimed at supporting the transition to electric transport, and therefore there is a European standard for universal connection to enable electric cars to charge up using ideally renewable energy provision, but certainly to get the power from the national grid in order to power transport in the UK. And
is it different for every country?
I believe so. I'm not so much involved in other countries' solutions. I know that many European countries have the same solution that we are providing, so a universal socket for all vehicles to be able to use. But what's most important is to enable it to be affordable, and so not overpricing that connection charge that some people can take advantage of to be comparable to or more than the fossil fuel industry by refueling vehicles. We want to show that electric is cheaper, and therefore connecting should be a fair price for that electricity.
So today, when somebody has an electric car and they go to use a charging station, maybe not yours, they have to pay a fee for that?
They do, and not only that, there can be many different mechanisms of membership, card access, in order to be able to use those networks. They vary in price and accessibility. We've created an open source charging infrastructure that has no membership barrier and no payment card system involved to make it more reliable. But that also means that it can be an option to put in a business, such as a hotel or leisure industry, where they can provide that charging for their customer base for free, which is a USP for them to encourage the electric transport driver to come to them, as opposed to a neighbouring one that doesn't have that facility. But most importantly, it would help to encourage more people to take up electric transport in the short term.
So these charging stations are entirely businesses?
They are predominantly destination locations, so most of them are hotels and B&Bs, but what we're finding now is that local authorities such as town councils are also wanting to support transportation in electric visitors to them, so kind of greening up the tourism industry. So quite often they will have car parks that are publicly accessible, and they sponsor to put one in to help with that transition to electric transport to their communities.
When was Zero Carbon World founded?
So it began around about 2011 by Kevin Sharp, who was an electrical engineer. He bought an electric car so was quite an early adopter, and he realised very quickly that there was a lack of charging infrastructure. So he basically designed charging stations that would be easily deployed and low cost and easily maintained and upgraded. And so he bought quite a fair few for the donation project to start.
He created his own charging station as a kind of a start to doing all of this?
Yeah, so he engaged with a manufacturer of the casing that was used in marines for boats to be able to access electricity. And so he designed using off-the-shelf electrical components, a socket that electric vehicles could use at that time to be able to charge up when they went and parked in a car park.
So basically a do-it-yourself kit.
Yes.
That he made to do
That's right, and that could be easily maintained and upgraded using off-the-shelf components, which isn't far from what we have today as well.
So how quickly did it grow? I mean, from the first one to the first 50?
So between 2011 to 2014, we had donated about 444 charging stations across the country.
Okay, and you're up to how many now?
Today we have 685 donated.
So when you say donated, that's by these businesses, these hotels. They're paying Zero Carbon World to get this for their facility?
So sadly not that donating to the charity itself. We donate the charging station.
Oh, you're donating.
To the destination. So they pay to install it using a qualified installer that we can link them with. So that's their kind of buy-in.
I see.
So that they will value the charging station that we donate. We are mainly supported through EV drivers, environmentalists and community groups that want to help speed up the transition to decarbonise transportation. And so they can sponsor the charity in order to help deploy the charging stations to those locations.
How long have you been with the organization?
So I started working with Zero Carbon World in 2013. So I've now been involved in, so 2 years since it was started.
I mean, so you're there in the early days. Walk us through how you build a nonprofit like this.
So you really have to thank the founder for his insight and passion that this sector really needs supporting. He did most of the charging station sponsorship by creating and buying a certain percentage in order to start the donation project. And linking with lots of places that EV drivers outreach to who talk about the project that we deploy, get more kudos and support and installations. And then you've got the EV drivers who visit those locations, who give positive feedback to the hosts to see that the value is really important to help with the increase of electric customer base.
What form does that feedback come in? Just they say they're happy, or do they share it on social networks, or?
So there's varieties of that kind of feedback. Indeed, the most powerful are the ones on social media through Twitter and Facebook, and also anecdotes that we get as a charity that you can find on our websites from EV drivers who really value the open source element of our charging network, the ability to be able to turn up and plug in, and it's reliable at venues that they go and stay or visit or spend money with. So these are all really positive and helps to enhance our new inquiries and deployment of charging stations further around the country.
So once Kevin had done some of the first ones, he was basically funding the creation of this. Then how did you go about getting, more of them? You're up to over 600 now. Did he fund all of them, or?
So he funded the majority of them, but also through the donations that we've received through EV drivers, and again supporters in the community who want to help decarbonise transport has enabled us to purchase subsequent ones. And we hope that we will encourage more sponsorship and financial support from these sort of donors in order for us to achieve the 1,000th donated charging station.
That's your goal?
That was always the initial goal of the charity, and it would be great to do that if it's something that EV drivers and the community want. In order for us to achieve that, we need that kind of support, yeah.
These hotels and other businesses, parking garages, do they charge their tenants or customers for use of these recharging stations?
So we do say it's a pay-as-you-go network, which means that hosts are able to ask for a donation towards the cost of the electricity used should they desperately need it. But most people will be coming to that venue spending money anyway. So it's an added USP to encourage that new customer base to come. And also what we're finding with the private networks is quite often they are very expensive and more than the realistic price for electricity and maintenance of some of these units. So again, it's to try and be open and honest about the true costs and not put barriers into speeding up the transition process, because if it's going to be costing more than it would a fossil fuel car, less people are going to be wanting to make that change early if they can't see not only the environmental benefit but also the financial benefit.
Well, what would the price be for me to charge my car at a high-priced charging station?
So the realistic price for charging your electric vehicle is the price per unit, say maximum 18 pence per kilowatt. Most vehicles will be stopping for an hour at the slowest time that they want to sort of turn that around. So it's that times 7 kilowatts. What we're finding that the commercial industry are trying to charge, £5-10 for something that is only about £2-3. Of course, there are variables because when a car turns up, we don't know how flat the battery is and how much it will need to be able to go to fully charged. But again, the average time and price to charge an electric car, looking at the sort of annual and hourly costs, is around about £2.40. So charging more than £5 is somewhat unrealistic. And of course, then the market will decide. So if there are infrastructure charging as much as they possibly can, then the EV drivers, when they get a choice, will choose not to go to that destination and they'll pick one that's more affordable or in fact offers it as an incentive to spend money in that venue. So you've got to look at the other elements and benefits of putting a charging station at your location.
Want to help save the planet? Here's an idea. Go nude. Unfortunately, not wearing clothes isn't realistic for most of us, but buying sustainable clothing is. Here's Gordon Seabury, CEO of Toad & Co.
Few know that garment production can generate tremendous pollution. So that's why we're hellbent on offering cleaner, sustainably made clothing that's stylish and long-lasting. But that's only half the battle at Toad & Co. When it comes to hitting our business goals, we've learned to focus on what we're good at and seek partners for other areas of expertise. So when it came to ensuring a consistent customer experience across all sales channels and knowing what was going on with all aspects of our business, we chose NetSuite by Oracle. They know business systems, we know eco-friendly clothes. A perfect match.
From accounting and finance to commerce and human resources, NetSuite is the #1 business system to help you simply manage your business. Right now, go to netsuite.com/toad to get your free guide, Crushing the 5 Barriers to Growth. That's netsuite.com/toad for your free guide and to hear Gordon bear all on Toad & Co.'s growth story.
Let's take a step back and talk about the problem a little bit from your organization's standpoint. Where are we in terms of the impact to the environment?
So in the UK, 40,000 people a year die from respiratory diseases related to air pollution. 34% roughly of carbon emissions come from personal transport. And so we need to radically make changes into society to help reduce those impacts, both on the environment and the health and well-being of the nation. And the IPCC report last year said we've got 12 years left to massively reduce the carbon emissions of everything we do in society if we're going to save ourselves from complete climate breakdown. And the technologies have been here for a long time. The first ever motor vehicles, the reason it's called a motor vehicle is because it was a motorised electric transport. So this is nothing new. It's just that we kind of went down the wrong branch when we discovered fossil fuels. And so we shouldn't be fearful to return to something that's cleaner, easier to access, better for people and the planet, and really put our whole weight and economy behind making the best that we can in the short time that we have left.
I was thinking we just go back to rickshaws.
And that's not a bad idea to include that into the solution. And what I love to see around London is those cycle-powered rickshaws. And actually in central cities, we really should have more walking, more cycling, and not have any kind of those motorised-based vehicles, because that's not only beneficial to the environment and our air quality, but also just in being around a space where you can more easily walk and cycle has much greater benefits for the towns, the villages and the cities, and for us getting around and mobilising ourselves around these spaces.
At the end of 11 years, if we've done nothing to reduce carbon emissions from cars, it's not reversible anymore? Is that the outcome?
We're looking already potentially that we may be too late.
Right.
So there's a real massive sense of urgency to do all we can. And I think also we've got to think about the wider beneficial, about access to clean energy, the benefit it will have to society and many other levels. But we are also in the midst of a mass extinction of ecology. We're losing a huge amount of insects that feed up the food chain, that affects us as humans, as animals in this ecosystem. And we are seeing that our demise is going to be happening unless we radically interact and save what we can now and make those changes. And I think it's something that we are all responsible for. And whether it's making those changes ourselves by investing in clean renewables, electric vehicles, local food, reducing flying, we can also impact by having these conversations further up with as many people from family to businesses, because together we can make changes really quickly.
Well, some of the figures you cited were UK figures. How does the UK fare against other countries in that regard, in the amount of carbon pollution?
So we are one of the worst emitters, which is really frustrating as an island that has so much renewable resources, from the seas surrounding the country to the part of the windiest parts of the world that we could be engaging in for our cleaner energy resources. And also food production. I think as an island we are far too obsessed with the economic value of export and import, and when we could be doing much more to reduce that transportation in our businesses by engaging more in what we can provide for ourselves. And actually I think the UK is one of the worst emitters to many other parts of Europe because of that.
Having a robust charging infrastructure makes having electric vehicles more amenable. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? You know, the founder, Kevin, had a car, didn't have many places to charge it. Now we have lots of places to charge it, a growing number every day, and therefore more incentive for people to buy electric. We saw in 2018 a 30% growth in electric vehicles. I read that Europe leads the world in terms of per capita. China, of course, is the biggest market, so they just have a lot more people, so the numbers are larger. But also China is growing 150% compounded annual growth between 2013 and 2017 in terms of use of electric cars. And I read another stat that JP Morgan predicted that by 2025, 30% of cars sold will be hybrid electric vehicles or electrical vehicles. Do you see, especially being so close to this industry, this rapid growth? Is it rapid enough?
It is rapid. In the last few years, we've seen a huge percentage increase per registration for electric vehicles, but we have been a very slow standing point to reach where we are today. And I think we're only at about 1-2% of all vehicles on the road are electric right now. What's exciting, though, is to see more electric vehicles in rural areas where they thought the industry would be very slow to take up. So that's really encouraging. To play EV bingo, where I live in rural Somerset, there's several you can now see on a journey per day. But there still is very lacking support through the government incentives. They keep changing the goalpost by reducing the amount of funding they are putting towards new purchases of electric vehicles or charging infrastructure. And so that gives people an insecurity in knowing where this is the right way to put their investment and time into. So I think that really needs to be addressed. We are innovative as a country, and historically, through the kind of motor industry, we were very much leading in the world, and we seem to have gone backwards quite a lot in that process. Of course, I agree that we should also be focusing on walking and cycling, which is really important to help reduce carbon emissions, but also for the health and well-being of our nation. And there needs to be a lot more support for that through the infrastructure for cycle networks and provision for walking networks to be enhanced. But certainly when you come to places like London, one of the most polluted cities in the UK, and there's far too many fossil fuel vehicles still being used around the central parts of these high urbanised areas. And what's happening in other parts of Europe where they're actually banning motor vehicles of all sorts from central parts of high conurbation areas has a massive reduction in air pollution and carbon. So we should be thinking much more urgently about the solutions that we're providing to decarbonise our society.
The charging infrastructure is just one component of it. What are some of the other barriers for consumers in terms of buying electric vehicles?
Well, as I said, it's the government incentive to help subsidise some of those costs because they're still more expensive than your standard fossil fuel vehicle. And until those prices become more accessible, the uptake is going to be less than is what is capable in order to make the change that is required. So I think a lot more investment support needs to be coming from the government and other decarbonisation businesses to help with that transition, and car sharing schemes and all sorts of other ways to get more people into electric vehicles and out of fossil fuel vehicles is what's really needed.
Of electric vehicles, what's the biggest price barrier? Is it the battery? Why are they still so expensive?
Partly because of the production scale, that obviously the more you produce, the cheaper they become. But we've also got to be aware that there are certain components within electric vehicles that are scarce or difficult to get from parts of the world. And we need to be putting a lot more investment into more sustainable battery solutions, which there are, but because there hasn't been enough financial support to help bring that to the fruition, we are still relying on slightly more expensive components for electric vehicles. But what's also really important is to know that there is the ability to reuse and recycle lithium batteries. And again, because there isn't enough in the industry to support that process, that's very expensive. So again, we really need to be putting as much investment and support into these solutions to help with that resource issue as well.
There are a lot of positive factors here. The price of batteries has come
Massively
down,
decreased, yes.
15 to 20% per annum, I believe. You have the state where we live, California, is investing $1 billion in charging stations. China has a target of 4 million new charging posts by 2020, by next year. So a lot of the tide seems to be turning, and to some degree.
Yes, and all those stats are really encouraging. Let's just hope that the UK government can be a bit more supportive and doing everything it can urgently to deploy this as quickly as we possibly can. There's lots of campaigns in the UK trying to bring forward the date to ban fossil fuel cars being sold over here, because at the moment it's still too far away to make the impact that's required in the short term. So we do require a lot more support and education through that system, and financial support through those people who see the value in urgently decarbonising before it's too late.
Which American company started with a guy in a garage, was featured on Shark Tank, and now has over 1 million customers? Hint, they're reducing crime in neighborhoods everywhere. Here's Ring Video Doorbell founder Jamie Siminoff with his secret to success.
It's true. In just a few years, we've had huge growth. We've hired hundreds of people, expanded our warehouse, and we're shipping millions of units a year, all while making sure our customers are happy. I've had lots of things to worry about, but I never worry about our finance and accounting, because we use NetSuite from Oracle. From the beginning, NetSuite let me see what's going on with my business in real time. From revenues to expenses, customers and orders, even HR. I run my business from a dashboard right on my phone. NetSuite has been my business management system from 10 to a team of over 1,000. And NetSuite will be my choice as we continue to innovate and grow.
Go to netsuite.com/ring to see how Jamie scaled his business. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/ring for your free guide and the story of a great American company. netsuite.com/ring.
And in terms of the expense of the cars, you've got a lot of the luxury brands are starting to make those cars, appealing to people with deep pockets who might spend because they're getting the brand value of having a Mercedes or BMW or Audi, or even, of course, Tesla, NIO in China. A lot. So it's appealing to that higher end buyer.
Yes, no, it is, which is great. Hopefully that's something that will be able to filter down. It would be really great if there was kind of a social element of that a percentage could be redirected to produce lower cost, even localized EVs for particularly city runarounds and solutions like that. But I think that's also the problem with the charging infrastructure that sees the amount of money that some people are willing to pay for that kind of brand identification that is actually an escalated price, and they think they can therefore overcharge for the charging network to fit in with that, which is not a good thing if you're going to encourage the masses to be able to access that. And also what's great is to see some development in certain countries with EV batteries and low-cost car solutions, and even Tesla trying to find a solution for more affordable electric car versions to get to the masses. But we need to really focus on get that happening much more quickly if we can.
What role do you see big oil and typically fossil fuel-based companies playing? And do you see them hedging their bets a little bit now? I saw Shell bought EV Box as just one example, or is it just for show, or are these companies really seeing the light?
Personally, I just think that that's kind of greenwashing for what they are still doing to the planet by pushing more and more for fossil fuel extraction, and it's a bit of a kind of corporate greenwash element. Shell recently have been in a community trying to encourage people to uptake their so-called renewable home energy. And when you look at what the website is saying, if you switch to them, you get a discount on their fossil fuel at the petrol station pumps. So quite honestly, I think they should be paying for the damage that's happening to this world and using that investment to much more speedily transition to a decarbonised electric solution for transport and energy across the world.
You talked about incentives, in almost every government, disincentives and incentives as tools to use the stick and the carrot, I guess you would say. Which do you see working better?
We'd all rather have a carrot than be hit by a stick, that's for sure. But what I think is really important to highlight is creating a fair playing field, and that's what we don't have today. So in the UK, there are huge tax breaks for the fossil fuel industry. Air flight, the fuel used in airplanes is also massively tax reduced and isn't a fair price compared to other forms of energy. If we're going to be really serious about making these changes, let's have a fair playing field so that renewables and electric vehicles get the same tax breaks, same incentives as the fossil fuel industry, so that we can make fair decisions about how we can take this forward. Because at the moment, carbon is so cheap that it's much an easier choice for people to invest in that. And it's what's causing the mass damage to our environment as well as our health. And until we get a fair playing field, it's going to make it very difficult to make the speed of change that is required.
I mean, I guess carbon neutrality is for now a great goal. I always think about neutrality. That means we're taking some out, but we're still spending some. Do you foresee a day when we can, take it the other way, be carbon negative?
Yes, for sure. And again, by embracing and engaging with nature and the way that it sustains itself and balances within the carbon cycle, we need to obviously plant a lot of trees in order to decarbonise the atmosphere, as well as reducing what's going into it. And of course, I appreciate that there will be needs of some fossil fuels to kickstart the renewables in order to then continue that wheel of self-sustaining energy. So we have a small amount of carbon that we can use that is accessible today, but in the long term, we need to completely move away from fossil fuels and burning any kind of resources that we can't regenerate within our own society. Every year there's like an overshoot day that has been monitored about how much of the world's resources we consume that the planet can no longer self-sustain, and that's happening earlier and earlier each year. We really have to readdress this immediately if we are going to survive as a culture and civilization.
I think it's very admirable that you are a nonprofit going up against almost entirely for-profit companies. What are some of the challenges in doing that?
Well, of course, funding the activities that we do is a huge challenge by having to rely on donors and having the time to find funding applications in order to achieve what we do. So I'm hoping that more people will see the benefit in giving us some money to do what we do, because the outcome and the value from that for each individual, as well as the benefit for the wider world and society and life that we sustain, is really important and has higher value than any financial statement will ever be.
You've hit a lofty goal of 600. What did you say? 600 and how many?
We've got 685 donate today, and we would love to get to 1,000.
Amidst those numbers, there has to be some interesting or success stories that stand out in particular.
Yes, of course. We've been really lucky to have engaged with the National Trust in Wales, who put our charging stations into a lot of their destination locations, from stately homes to gardens. That's been great. We were early on engaging with Best Western hotel chain, and over 70 of their hotels put charging stations in. So that was a really great engagement and partnership with them. What's great as well is we've got a few town councils who can see the benefit of putting a charging station in their car park to support the community in the short term, be able to value and visit with their electric cars. So it's been really fun working with a variety of different organisations, as well as individuals who want to support our mission.
What advice would you give to other leaders of nonprofits?
Keep going. Because with anything like this, there are ebbs and flows with support and interest. And certainly in the environment sector, we thought we were doing well 10 years ago when there was a lot more support, and then apparently there was this economic crash, which meant that the environment didn't matter anymore, when in fact what we can see is there's nothing more important. And the tides are starting to turn again, literally, because as sea level is rising and people are being impacted around the planet, we know that we need to make these changes now. So I really implore people in the environment and the charitable sector who have been continuing to do this work to keep at it, because there's nothing more important than what we're doing today for tomorrow.
How can our listeners get involved with Zero Carbon World?
Well, do visit our website, zerocarbonworld.org. We've got a donors page there where they can simply click on and donate some money to our PayPal account, which will help with our project. But also just to talk about our network, encourage venues who might want to install one of the charging stations to sign up and get involved in that. And certainly just keep talking about these solutions that can happen and are happening to encourage more uptake and support. But yeah, certainly we'd be very grateful for any amount of money that people like to donate to our project.
Kara, good luck, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Well, I truly hope this makes you think twice about our planet, because it made me think twice about our planet, maybe even 3 times about our planet, and what simple actions you can take to help. And I want to thank Kara Naden from Zero Carbon World for joining us on this episode of the Grow Wire podcast. And I want to thank our sponsors at The Second City, Toad & Co., and Ring, our editors over at Lampstand for making us sound better, as well as our producer, Kendall Fisher. Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you, and Happy New Year again, everyone.
And of course, thank you for tuning in. Talk with you next time.
You just listened to the Grow Wire podcast with host Fritz Nelson. Make sure to keep tuning in for more episodes full of tips, tools, stories, and strategies to help take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.